Are you ready for another great knife? If so, we're going to be taking a look at this Keskin 230mm Gyuto. If you haven't already, please consider supporting the channel by hitting that like and subscribe button. We also have an IG knife shop where we sell some knives to fund the channel, and we also have a merch store where you can grab some merch to help further support this madness. Now, quick disclaimer, I purchased this knife 100% with my own money, and I'm not getting paid to do this video. So that way you guys know that my feedback and review is 100% honest and of my own. And as always, this is a first impression video. We'll come back here in 6 months to see how this baby holds up. If you guys have not heard of Keskin before, Keskin is a knife maker based out of Kendal, Central Java in Indonesia. They sell their knives through Kitchen Knives ID. That's how I got introduced to this maker. And I gotta say, these knives have great craftsmanship. Their discipline and their pride is very, very apparent in their work. I mean, look at this beautiful knife. It's probably a fairly bold statement to make, but I'm willing to say that their craftsmanship is up there with some of the Japanese artisan makers. Now let's jump straight in and take a look at this knife. First, let's go ahead and take a look at the specs of this knife. I think it might be safe to say that this knife has the specs of a laser, or at least very close to what people call a laser Gyuto or a laserish knife. The length of this blade is 235mm long from heel to tip. At the heel, the blade height is 54.5mm tall. The spine thickness right at the heel is about 2.6mm, and it tapers all the way down to 0.8mm thin at the tip. And the thickness right behind the edge is about 0.39mm thick. Now, one of the first things that I noticed about this knife is how light this knife is. This knife is so light in comparison to the regular Kitchen Knives ID knives. When I picked it up, I thought this knife was just not even there. It's so light and nimble in the hands. Now, let's go ahead and move on to material. This knife is made out of 5160 steel, or some people would just call it spring steel. And it is heat treated according to Kitchen Knives ID to at least 62 Rockwell hardness. As you can see here, it has a very visible hamon going through the knife. Any Japanese knife that has a hamon are usually very, very expensive. And with that being said, Keskin has their own proprietary blend of clay that they use to heat treat this knife to create this differential heat treatment. And with all that being said, this is probably one of the most affordable honyakis that you can find in the market. The blade leads down to this very unique and beautiful 𝗙𝗟𝐷 handle that they're famous for. This is a very, very pretty handle, and I like it quite a bit. The handle itself is made out of acacia wood with a rosewood ferrule. It also comes with a matching acacia saya, and it also has a full bullhorn pin to hold the knife in place. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at the fit and finish of the knife. Let's check for straightness first. The knife seems nice and straight. Yep, very nice and straight. Let's take a look at this finish. The finish is fairly even. They have this beautiful satin finish to bring out the hamon, and I like this quite a bit. And when I spoke to Omar from Kitchen Knives ID, they told me that they achieved this frost-like finish by hand finishing it with finger stones, natural finger stones. And from my understanding, the edge of the knife is also finished on natural stones. Now, the only thing I would have to say about this finish is that on the lower part of the hamon, that they have these scratches that go all the way through the knife. Like there are some, I don't know if it's from the finger stones or it's from sharpening. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I'm not too sure. It might be from the finger stones when they're finishing it, but there's some slight scratch pattern going through there. And I'll get a different angle so you guys can take a closer look at it. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the handle. It's nice and even in there, very tightly fit. The handle itself is very symmetrical and even. There are no gaps all around. The finish is very nice. It's very comfortable in the hands. Like, this is extremely comfortable in the hands. Now, fit and finish wise, this is actually fairly nice. Like, outside of like this scratch patterns going through the knife, which I'm slightly disappointed of. But outside of that, the finish of the knife is actually very nice. The spine is not overly sharp, even though it's not rounded. And same thing with the choil. Even though it's not rounded all the way through, it's not overly sharp on the hands. Now lastly, before we move on to the cut test, let's go ahead and take a look at the profile and the grind of the knife. The profile of the knife is more onto the flat side, but it does have a slight belly to it, so it still allows you to rock cut a little bit. And it has a very, very pretty blade shape. I like this profile quite a bit, actually. Now let's take a look at the grind. The grind of the knife is nice and thin and very gradual all the way through. And I'll grab a different angle so you guys can check this out. Now, speaking of this grind, I'm ready to test this guy out. I've had this knife for probably 2 or 3 months already, and I've been waiting to test this guy out. So let's go ahead and move on to the cut test. Okay, so first things first, always a quick paper test. See how the edge is from factory. Let's see. So you guys can see nothing holding it up. Oh, that is so smooth. It's very, very nice. It's a very nice edge on this knife. Knocked it over. Trying to catch the angle again. Let's try that again. That was fun. Yeah, so as you guys can see, standing paper cut test passes with no problem. I mean, it glides right through the paper. Push test, as you can see, cuts very nicely. Next, let's go ahead and move on to the carrot test. And just gonna do the... As you guys know, the carrot test is one of my favorites because if there are any wedging from the knife, you instantly see it. You see it splitting and wedging through the carrot. And there is no splitting or wedging so far. It just went right through it. No wedging whatsoever. Went through that carrot fairly nicely. Knife was really nice in the hands. So as you guys can see from the carrot test, there are no wedging whatsoever. Go ahead and cut this onion up. Glides right through, no issue whatsoever. Oh. Hit with a couple horizontal cuts. glides right through. Oh yeah. Cuts very nicely. And the food release, I mean, as you guys know, with full flat grinds and knives that are more on the laser side, the food release is never that great. But it just glides right through the food, which is a beautiful feeling. Okay, so as you guys can see in the cut test, this knife performs pretty well. No wedging whatsoever, and the factory edge came really sharp. It's very nicely done, and it almost has a mirror polish actually on this factory edge. So it's very, very nice. I'll try to grab a different angle so you guys can kind of see the factory edge a little bit better. So out of all the things, the knife performs well. Like I said, it is so light in the hands. It's so nimble, and it is just a very, very pretty knife. With the exception of some of the finish being not as nicely done. As I said before, there are these micro scratches all the way through the bottom half underneath the hamon, the lower half of the hamon. And it is slightly disappointing, but it's not a deal breaker for me, and here is why. The reason it's not a deal breaker for me is because I like using my knives. And eventually, when you use your knife enough, you will develop a patina, you will develop scratches on the knife. It's just the inevitable. I don't like a super pristine knife. I don't like mirror polished knives for that very reason. But that's also a very personal preference thing, right? So my personal preference, I don't mind it at all. And if you guys are into cars or dabble into cars, you will probably have heard of the term trailer queens. And I don't believe in trailer queens because I believe if you have a car, you built it up, you need to run it. And if I have a 600 horsepower car, I want to drive that sucker every single day. And I don't really care how much gas it sucks up. You know, if I spend the money on it, I'm going to want to drive it every single day. Just like a knife. If I spend money on a knife, and especially a nice knife, I'm going to want to use it every day. And that's just kind of the inevitable. When you keep using it every single day, you will have some wear and tear and scratches and things like that on there. So for me, it's not a deal breaker, and it'll be kind of fun to probably grab some natural finger stones to try to finish it myself to see what kind of finish I can achieve as well. So yeah, I see that as kind of a pro on, hey, it's forcing me out of my comfort zone to try some natural finger stones. I've always wanted to try some, and this is kind of giving me a reason to try it. So anyhow, this wraps up our video for the Keskin 230mm Gyuto, and I hope you guys like the video. If you guys do like the video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It'll mean the world to me. It'll help me support all of this madness, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.